Good morning, happy Friday, and welcome to Beyond the Sim, where I, Shaun Cole, am here with my good buddy Billy Strange to talk about sim racing. I hope you all have had a good week as we get ready for what should be a very, very fun weekend. At least it will be for me. We'll find out for everybody else. Billy, how you doing this wonderful Friday?
Good. Such an endearing intro. Thank you.
I was feeling it today.
I can tell. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I have a big weekend coming up that we'll talk more about. So I'm excited. Good things happening starting this evening. So that's cool. But before we get to that, what have you been up to this week in sim racing?
It's a good question. One I get asked often. No. So we did the truck race because it's been a week and a half.
Right.
Since we've done anything really. So the truck race, I'm trying to think if we did any, or if I did anything before that. I released a video on the Formula 90, the FR90s from Race Room. And then, so we did the truck race. That was a lot of fun. It was a really good race. I mean, I think Climber and I couldn't get away from each other the entire time. And then Mark and Liam were really quick. It was funny because in the beginning, I felt like when we started to do, there was a longer run. I thought I had figured out something because I was all of a sudden, after a handful of laps, I was making time. And then it was like, as the race went on, that advantage became less and less and less till I was like, oh, I'm not as fast as I thought I was. So then I had to make a strategy call at the very end, and it was very unlikely that it was going to work, but there was no way I was going to beat Mark or Liam if I didn't try something. So I just decided to forego the last pit stop and see if I could hold on with the tires. And Mark and I rubbed some fenders a little bit, but it was all in good fun. Like, it wasn't, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't one of those, I was trying to hold him down. Let's be clear. I was not going to let him by easily because it was only 2 laps to go. And we got the green, we went a whole lap and then went down into 1 and 2. And I'm like, I know it's going to happen. So I tried to hold him down as best as I could without completely chopping him off. And, he's got fresh tires. He's got much more speed going in. And that the interesting thing with Iowa is if you enter too early at Iowa, doesn't matter what happens, the truck literally dump trucks towards the fence.
Right.
So I kind of knew what was going to happen. we bang fenders and the truck just kind of slides all the way up the track. Climber gets underneath me. We got on the back straightaway. I do a crossover going into 3. I mean, it was a really fun race. So yeah, that was probably one of the more fun multiplayer races I've had. Sans like what we did with the off-road trucks in there, but like more of an official kind of race. That was probably one of the most fun races I've done in a long time. That was good.
I felt like that race at Iowa and the way you describe it. Last week I talked about Codemasters and one of their taglines for F1 2019. They were talking about respect and rivalries and reputation. And when you get in a really good racing series like we have going with the trucks, and a lot of the guys in that series are guys who either we've been racing with a long time and know very well, their performance ability, their trust factor, respect, rivalries, reputation. Reputation precedes you, and the guy you can pin down low and whether it's a safe move to even think about or who you need to give a wider berth to. And then the other factor, the rivalries, when you have somebody out on the track who you constantly are finding yourself in a door-to-door battle with, it just the fun factor for me goes through the roof. The intensity goes through the roof. And I think it's one of the reasons why people are huge fans of league racing, even though we do want to all be on a world global leaderboard of some sort as well,
Sure. Yeah, it's funny. It's like me and Climber, or it'll be, myself and Joa, or, it's just, we even do it every once in a while. It's like you just in that particular race. And then over time, it seems to just somebody will make a step up. And all of a sudden it's like that person realizes and then catches up, and you all still, even though I feel like the speed progresses, you all still kind of have this back and forth. So it's fun. Mark and I have done it every once in a while. Mark's, I think, clearly faster than I am usually. But I mean, I remember we ran the race at Darlington last year, and that was probably the most I could put the screws to him.
Yeah.
Beyond that, he pretty much walks away. But it was a fun race. There was a lot of strategy. Mark was clearly better at conserving his tires.
Right.
There we had that second longer run, and Joa mentioned it when we hit the yellow. Like, you were running a different line, Climber was running a different line, I was running a different line, and even Mark and Liam were running different lines at Iowa. So I think that track itself just produces that kind of racing. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
Oh no, I was just the trucks are, it's such a great oval educating drive, because tires, it really, more than anything else that I drive, it points out the importance of saving tires, because what you can do in the first 3 to 5 laps is one thing. What you can do after 15 laps, if we get there, is a whole different story.
Yes.
I find that I cannot push the trucks. So when I get against guys like you, Climber, Michkowski, Quinn, I cannot push it like for qualifying, for even our practice before. But I know in my heart of hearts that if we can get a long green run, that I'm one of the better guys on a long run, because I'm like taking it easy on my tires from minute 1, and that's the only way I can drive the truck, it seems.
I take a little bit of a different philosophy. I found that the first lap or two, when the tires are really good, I push like hell to try and make up any positions or to make a gap. And then I back off and then just try to get the truck to roll through the corners and not burn off the tires as much. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I found that I've made up more positions that way, like on a restart or something, than allowing myself to wait, because once everybody gets spread out, you have to bank on that being a long run to get those positions back, and half the time It doesn't happen.
Very true.
And it's just the nature of the race we're doing. So you can't. That's why I said I was playing a little strategy when I was like, I know we have a handful of laps on our tires, but I'm hoping that half the field doesn't go in and Mark and Liam went in, and that didn't happen. But it was a fun race. Besides that, I'm working on a video just kind of covering the highlights of the season 3 build. So I've had fun going back, running the off-road, the Lucas Oil trucks again. Went through and I tried to find the difference between, if there was a difference between the Fusion and then the Mustang, the NASCAR, the Monster Energy Cup car, because the Fusion was before that, and it had the same rules package, because I think the build before they went to the new rules package.
Okay.
For NASCAR. So I wanted to see if there was any differences at all, but what they did was reverted the Fusion, it seems like, back to the older rule package with more horsepower, because, man, I was trying to run Charlotte. That is a handful. It just feels so unruly, and I'm not. It's difficult.
Yeah. Well,
a car with that much horsepower should be difficult, but seems to be difficult in a very extreme way.
Was it the hump coming off a 2 and the hump coming off a 4 that was just impossible?
No, it's almost like you could light the tires up at any time.
Yeah.
I mean, you really had to be careful about your momentum with the Fusion, with the older rules package. I struggle to think that the car is quite that difficult, just because when you watch guys, especially if you've raced yourself, you kind of get an idea what they're doing. But it wasn't possible. I couldn't compare the two because they didn't keep it with the same rule set. So
right.
I run the Mustang, and then we've been running the trucks. The trucks to me feel a little different. And then doing the Fury, the modified.
Uh-huh.
You can't even touch the old modified. That's gone. They just completely replaced it with the new modified, the NASCAR modified.
Right.
And yeah, so I'm doing a video on that. Other than that, I really haven't had a whole lot of time to do anything else. It's summer vacation for my kids, and my wife also works in the school district, so she's on summer vacation as
Uh-huh.
well. So everybody's at the house, so it's much more easy to hang out with them per se than, oh, we're gonna go do something today. Okay, fine, we'll do,
I've
we'll do some family stuff.
I've often wondered, you bring up the summertime. Like, when is sim racing at its peak popularity in terms of people online? And it's like, I can always make the argument for wintertime because, it's cold, you're indoors. But then, see, summers are long days. So it's like you can go in really, really late into the night because you tend to be up later.
And that's
So
typically what I've been doing.
yeah, so
Is late in the evening, typically I'll be messing with them, and that's what makes it hard to do any racing online, is because that time zone, there's nobody around.
no.
So
It's taken me half a lifetime to realize that we are like the last civilized time zone on Earth. Like
that, and our unfortunate friends in the Australia, New Zealand area, I think they have it as bad as us West Coasters, if not maybe even
yeah,
a little worse.
they're up so early. They're already getting up, and we're going to bed.
Right.
Or yeah, they're like a whole day ahead of
Something.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else?
No, I'm just trying to finish that video up, and then now that I've taken a different approach to doing things, I've got a list of stuff that I have lined out, some old retro stuff that I want to go through, but not there yet.
Right. Awesome. Well, I did that truck race, but I don't think I have anything to add to it that you didn't already say about it. My night was a little less exciting. And then the other thing is, all week long I've been working on various projects. One of them being the WRC8 First Thoughts from E3. So even though you and I talked about it on Wednesday night, Friday's show, even though I talked about it again on Monday, this little more summarized version with all the footage that I actually grabbed from there. And I actually have some pretty cool footage of the game. So that'll come out. It's actually out. It'll be live as soon as this show's over.
Oh, okay, great.
And I was working on that, and now I'm working on the next level racing stuff from E3 as well. They have some new they have a bunch of new products. So a little teaser. They have like new products now for the hardcore sim racing people. Their new product is that traction loss thing that we talked about.
Right.
So I'll show that in action, and I only got to drive it for about 6 minutes total, but I'll be getting one for review. I'm crossing fingers, should be. And then they have a bunch of other products. Like one, I'll tease it, but they have like, the Play Seat Challenge, the fold up rig.
Yes, I remember you mentioning that. Yeah.
Yeah, Next Level made like a full rig version of the same thing that'll fold up and go in your closet.
Hey.
And it's like a Formula One style rig. So it's like, well, that's pretty badass for...
I was going to say, it sounds like a good option for people.
Exactly. And it's not for the hardcore unless they've been put in a tiny apartment. But so I'll have that as well. Oh, John Hill, no, I forgot to post on Facebook. I was a little behind on things. I can try to do that as I speak, though. I'm pretty slick at that kind of stuff. And then after that was Hot Lap Pump Day on Wednesday. And this was a special one. I never, when I'm told that some celebrity is going to be on, unless I know it's like written in stone, it's kind of hard for me to like promote it that way. Because I don't want to put the,
right.
It's like if I didn't make those arrangements, I don't want to put that obligation on them and let down the world. So nobody even knew, but Robbie Unser is going to be there again. And so not only was he running on track with us, and he's pretty darn good considering he's new to sim racing, he was working on setup, and we were talking a little bit of setup logic. We missed the setup, but we figured out where we missed by watching the top three guys. So sitting there with somebody who really understands it, I'm a hack when it comes to racing. It's like all my wisdom and knowledge of racing is self-taught. Versus somebody like an Unser who grew up in a racing family and knows the idiosyncrasies of speed. And just being there with him, and, I'm always talking about what can we do to be faster and be better. But, we're watching replay, and he's like, look, they're 6 miles an hour slower than we are down the back stretch. duh, they're running more downforce. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we were running light downforce and we were hauling ass. These guys were carrying more speed, and the end result was a full second faster lap time. We didn't find that until late in the game while trying to go through our own setup process. But it was a good run, and I've been doing better in these hot lap pump days, so I was this close to the podium once again. And you know, I keep getting there because somebody's not there for the final, so I'm like in fourth, so I inherit one of the spots. And I was one spot away from an inherited spot once again, but I'm doing better, and it was cool running with him.
Hey, that doesn't matter. You know, we have these things called in sprint car racing. If somebody can't make the main, you have somebody. Oh man, now I forget what it's called. Alternate basically is what it is.
Right.
And so you get ready just in case somebody doesn't make the call. And twice I've had it where, you know, we just didn't have a good night. I had to come from way deep in like the B or the C main, and,
right.
you know, you just missed it by one. And then all of a sudden you just go, oh, I'll just get, you know, suited up anyways. And all of a sudden you get the call, hey, they're not going to make it. Be on the track and be on the track in 90 seconds.
Right.
And you're just like, oh crap.
Yeah, because if you're 91 seconds, he gets it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was fun. And then we also talked some other things. So it's like, here's this cool hot lapping event for 4 hours. Kevin Ford calling the action. Me stressing out, trying to turn some laps. Watching Robbie turn some laps. Watching the guys in Miami. And then we're also talking about other things like driver position. You know, and I've always questioned like the Formula One driving position. And I'm like, you know, the drivers just become another part of the tool, you know, of the whole package. And look at the way they have them just sitting in there all cocooned, and that can't be the most comfortable. But then now my experience in open wheeled cars, now I've been in laid down, you know, I've been in an F2 car, and it's like, or F2000 I should say, and you're laid down, but it never occurred to me that that would actually be the sensible driving position for a high G car. Because instead of trying to hold your upper body from doing this, it's now your whole body from doing this. So all the time when I've been building cockpits for myself is what I'm getting at. I've always put them in a GT, Toyota Camry driving position, assuming that that's the most ergonomic feel. Otherwise, that's why Toyota puts it in the Camry. That has always been my logic. And I guess we're not pulling G's, so that wouldn't make the argument for sitting in a Formula One position. But it also takes away my argument that that isn't an optimal driving position. So for those who love the Formula One driving position and have an F1 rig, my hat's off to you. That is a correct driving position. It's not compromised because of the car. You don't need the G-force help, but... that was kind of cool, talking about that kind of stuff. I asked him, you know, if he was going to build a rig because he's running a desktop, what would he do? And he'd want something more laid down in a Formula One type position. So that was all cool. It was great conversation, great banter, great tech thinking, search for speed thinking, and just I love those streams when we have all that kind of input into one show like that. So that was definitely the highlight of my week this week. And Lionheart, it meant, unfortunately, that I missed Lionheart's race at Mossport, Canadian Motorsport Park, which was too bad.
You talk about seat positions.
Yes.
So I think about in a sprint car, you literally sit upright.
And he mentioned that, like, for that car, you need to be in that position.
Yeah, you sit upright. And it's funny because when I had the first containment seat, I felt like I was along for the ride. And then I got this Race Tech carbon fiber Kevlar thing. And I snapped in that seat. And I instantly felt like part of the car instead of just kind of hanging on for the ride. And it's interesting going from that seating position. I don't use that seating position when in my rig because it's not uncomfortable, but it kind of doesn't make sense.
Right.
So the seating position that I use is I got to sit. I didn't drive it, but we went to Sonoma years ago when it was the Continental GT stuff. And there was a team with an Audi R8 and they were super friendly. Like we're walking by and they got all the doors open and I've never seen, at that point, I had not seen a GT car GT3 car up close. And so, of course, I'm all nosy. I just freaking poke my head in there, start looking around. And the guy just walks up. He's like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, oh, I'm just, this is awesome. Like, I've never been this close. He's like, well, come on and sit in the car. So I got to sit in that Audi. And I'm like, oh, man, this is really cool. Like, just sitting in the car, like, okay. Like, I can kind of get, I'm leaning back. Sorry. The idea that I had, you're sitting so much lower than I thought you would.
Right.
You can, and I'm not that tall to begin with, but the driver in that car was roughly the same size as me. And I'm just looking over the dash.
Right.
I can't see the hood of the car. I'm like, my hands almost cover. And I found it interesting because then when I started doing road racing with the big carts, I can't even see past my hand because I'm so low in the cart. And it's like in the sprint car, you can't see on the right-hand side. And so like the seating positions, just like like what would be in an open wheel car, can you imagine how much you can't see and how much your brain has to make up for the things that you can't see, either by feel or by sound or just... I talk about, every once in a while, I'll talk about guys that just have this natural presence that they understand where the car is and where everything else is around them. Kyle Larson is a really good example when also, I'm going to talk more from the dirt track side, but also Tyler Walker was a really good example before he went off the deep end about that guy just had a natural ability to know what was around him. And I'm always in awe of those people because I always felt like I had to work. I kind of felt it, but I had to like tune myself into that natural awareness to not think about it. So it's just interesting, all the seating positions. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're all going forward. You're going the same direction. And, they all have their pitfalls with them. You look at the guys in the DTM cars and they're so far back in the car, they're clear back by the pillar.
Right.
It's so interesting to see how much closer those cars, I feel. You watch the stock car guys and you watch old Trans Am racing. Those guys are sitting up in the seat, and the further it goes along, the more F1 like it almost becomes.
Right. Well, and even look at F1. Back in the day, a driver would be seen from this point upward, and it wasn't just that they had, but it's like they just realized year by year, the lower they could get the driver, the lower the centrifugal gravity of the car is. It's
center of gravity. Yeah.
Hey, Scuderia, thank you very much.
You.
And now look at even a Formula One car. I've not been in a modern Formula One car, but just looking at like Lewis Hamilton, it's like this is all you see of his from here up is all you even see of his head, and then you see his hands poking up when he turns them, But it's like the driver is almost he can't. I'm assuming.
No, you're relying on mirror, and then I'm telling you, I know you felt the same thing because you've actually raced. There's an awareness you build, and I actually use it when I sim race. That's why I don't have to use a lot of the extra stuff. I feel like because
it's that radar.
You kind of get an idea. Oh, this guy's going to do this. I know how tight this turn can be, so I know how much room I need to give. I know how hard I can drive in under somebody or around the outside. So you kind of, after a bunch of laps, you build up this faux awareness of things around you without really having to see it.
Sure. And it's a combination of a bunch of things. It's like that calculator in your head. So, when you get by somebody, your brain calculated what that passing speed was and how many milliseconds it would take till your tail should be clear, right? Just based on that mathematical equation. You've got peripheral vision that even if you're not seeing it, maybe it's even a little shadow, just one pixel, whether you're talking sim life or real life, just a pixel of shadow that you're like, that car is still there. You have a little bit of hearing.
I was going to say, you can hear, even when you can't see, you can hear that car.
Yes.
And you're like, I know how close that guy is.
Yes.
And I can tell how fast he's catching me too in some instances.
Yes. Yes, and all that, and then you think of like Assetto Corsa, Hella Corsa, with the little radar and the little red blips. And it's like, even if you're not seeing the red blips in your mind, they're occurring to your brain the same way.
Yes.
You know, and you're like, oh, warning, warning, blind spot warning, you know.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like, again, I go back to the sprint car because that's what I have the most experience with. But when it's dusty, you know, I would look for the flick, because you couldn't really see. I'd look for the flicker of the wing going into the corner to tell when that guy was turning and whether I should turn earlier or later, or how. Same thing when I do it a lot when we race in sim racing, but I learned it from sprint cars again. Was if I'm working on somebody, I start picking up their characteristics. I'll look for when their front tires start to twitch.
Right.
You can just kind of tell that
correction.
left front. Yep, that left front. Oh, he turned too early. That thing's going to push to the fence. I'm turning now, and I'm going to go underneath, or
Yes.
what have you. So
Yes.
just those little things that you pick up over time is really makes it fun, because you almost feel like you're telepathic to a degree. You're not.
Sure.
You're reactionary, but you feel like you're ahead of the curve.
And that's a really, you know, I'm going into an endurance race tonight. That's what my big news of coming. So we'll talk more about it. But last night I was practicing with a teammate who let's just call him Dan Stonnett. And I was trailing him into the bus stop. And I watched him hit one curb, and I watched him hit the second curb. And my brain knew what was going to happen to him after that, because there's only one result when you hit these two curbs with the Daytona prototype,
right,
which is you are going around. And I knew he was going to go around, but I was like right on his butt. So it's like, well, what do? You know, and I knew before it happened. So I had all the milliseconds, I was going to say all the time in the world. I had all the milliseconds in the world to decide how I was going to handle, because there's no just hitting the brake, you know, that would have been a dog pile. And it was like, okay, well, he should do this. I saw that move. I saw that bounce. He should do this, because that's what happened to me 100 times. And I just kind of squirted a little bit around it. Sorry.
I'm watching chat. Was there a particular person that may or may not have done that particular maneuver?
No. Is this? We'll just call him Dan Stonnett.
Oh, just giving you crap, Stan. Oh, that's funny. But it's
damn Stonnett.
It is. You know, you shouldn't be like laser focused on the car, but you do if you're paying attention, because the worst thing you can do is actually get locked onto the car in front of you. You start running their pace instead of your own. So you need to look beyond. You need to look ahead of that car. But when you feel like you're preparing yourself for a move, you know, you just key up on certain little things that the car may be doing differently, that you're like, be ready to pounce and make your move according to what they've missed.
Sure. Especially if you've been in a battle, you know.
Yeah, and you're talking split second. I mean, hundredths of a second even, just to make that reactionary move. It's not even like a thought anymore. It's just you react.
Right.
So it's like when Clymer and I were going down the back straightaway at Iowa, I knew I had two options. Either I'm going to rail the top and see if I can hold him down, or am I going to back off early? How hard is he going to drive in? And then I'm going to square up and try to get underneath him.
Right.
To do the crossover. And as we entered the corner, I could see his truck kind of surge going into the corner just a little bit. He's carrying too much speed. And I dab the brake just a little bit and turn underneath. And it just happened to work but you don't get that if you're not putting yourself in those situations, because I tell you, I've done it plenty of times wrong.
Right.
and not been able to make that move.
Right. I find the dirt trucks teach you those moments very well, you know, and you're like, you know, it's really hard to pass in those trucks. So all you're doing is looking for that. If you're in a good battle, you are looking for that moment, that slight indication that dude missed the turn in and is going to go wide. Because that is your only chance to dive inside and get inside of him and have a chance at the pass, you know. And it's like the whole time you're driving those, it's like every corner you're looking just for the slightest hint. You know, was it too much brake? Was it too much pitch? Was it just too much speed? And you're like, dude, you can't make the corner going that fast into it. And then you
The
look at
wonderful thing about dirt, you're constantly making a correction.
always, and then you take that to the oval trucks where it's totally different, but it's not. It's just, you only have two corners you're working with, and you're looking for even a smaller hint of a wiggle or like you said, a computation that doesn't make sense. You're like, you cannot hold that truck that low without this being the result. It has to. It's like a certainty of life. But again, what do? You have to scrub, correct, and pounce.
Yeah, and like I said, sometimes it doesn't work.
Right.
But you have to. That I guess that kind of leads us into the hot lapping versus racing debate, and actually getting on the track and not just even being in a practice with somebody. You can run all the laps you want in the world, but that doesn't change putting yourself in those situations to avoid a crash,
Right.
to avoid another vehicle, to make a really good pass, or to just trust it and just, hey, I'm either going to be a hero or I'm going to end up, for those that remember the reference, I'm going to end up in Costco. So you have to, I think that's the one thing I learned from racing real motorsports is you have to try. You have to trust and you have to try. And sometimes you're not going to get it right.
Right.
But you learn.
Last night I was doing some public practice for the endurance race, and I'm probably going to go out on a limb. I might have made a couple enemies last night because I was like, you know what? This is my last chance to try some stuff that I need to know how it's going to play out come race day. But if I'm in the faster, at Watkins Glen, the Daytona prototype barely has an advantage over the GTE car. Like, overall lap time left on our own, we're way faster. But on the track together, we don't have the horsepower to just pull them. We're not out-braking them so brilliantly that we can just dive bomb and take any corner from them. But we are significantly faster, so they need to get out of our way at the same time, kinda. But they're, and in an endurance race, that's the magic of the race. It's not just the endurance and the length, but it's that it's one of those rare chances of multi-class racing. But last night, I wanted to purposely put my car in some bad spots. Too low on a corner entry, fighting and if I'm doing that, I'm pushing that GTE car to the outside. Well, now I can't just miss the corner. I have to woe it up enough. And at the same time, this is where it gets to are you being a jerk, now I've pushed him off the driving line, essentially. And can I make that stick for me? Like, is that a count? Because I can't come out and fight him into the next corner, or that's just not going to work. And so I had to do some of those. Getting around him without horsepower, I have to draft him to the bitter end. Well, I found one guy running in the middle of the track. So I waited and waited to make my move until we're about to kiss bumpers, and then I made my move just as he was like, oh, let me get out of the way for this guy, and made the same move, and I just barreled right into him. And that kind of gets back to that millisecond thinking, that pre-planning, but it also covers the whole...
Sometimes you're just not going to get it right.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
You're depending on them to make a somewhat predictable move based on the scenario that's playing out in front of you. And so a lot of people, when they go, well, why did he run into this person, or why did he cut him off, or what? You're having to think so quickly, and you're going at such a rate of speed that you've already you've already committed. You've already planned this out. And until that driver in front of you does something different to change that plan, the plan going forward is, this is how I'm going to, if he's running in the middle of the straightaway and we're going into a right-hander, I'm not passing him on the outside. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wait till the last second and then just barrel underneath him, move him out of the way, and then around the corner I go. And then all of a sudden he decides to turn early, or move over just a hair on you and brake. You can't anticipate that.
No.
You could wait.
Well,
right. But then I've lost races because I've waited.
Exactly.
I've lost races because I've waited to pass.
And that's part of what I was trying to learn last night, because some of the mistakes that I made, I threw out at least 10 vocal I'm sorries, meaning I hit 10 other people at some point in a 2-hour practice. But I was doing it with, I wasn't hitting people with intention. I was putting myself into difficult moments with intention. Because I wanted to see how people are reacting. I want to know, like, again, it's hard for me to pass, but I need to get by. In the carousel, well, if they're out wide, all I have to do is get inside. As soon as they know I'm there, they cannot fight me on the outside of the corner. But putting my car in that position, I have to be looking for that guy to be turning for apex. He's not taking a wide entry to say, hey, DP, go by. He's taking it because that's the driving line. And so I have to be very mindful of this, because all of those moments were on me, the passing driver, to avoid. It wasn't on the guy I'm trying to get around. It's on me.
I would agree.
And having that awareness to say, you know what, don't make the move now. I know you want it. I know you want to get by him now. But the heads-upness to make the call to not wrinkle the car, not be out of the race. I mean, and at least half of those could have been race-ending incidents. A couple of them were just little tappy-tap moments or spin-outs, but half of them could have been an hour-long repair in a 6-hour race.
And it's also race, what do I want to say? It also matters what kind of race you're running. So like Stan says, you got to be decisive and show your move early on lower class car to be safe. And that's a good rule, especially when you're doing a longer race. You can afford to, hey, this is where I'm going. As we come off the corner, I'm already moving way to the right to show you this is what my plan is. I need you to hold your line, and I'm going to go by you. When you're running sprint cars, when you're running that kind of race, you just, doesn't matter. I'm moving you out of the way, whether you like it or not, because I've got to get by, because I've only got 30 laps, and there's a guy on my tail tank trying to pass me.
Yes.
So I've run races, real life, where in hot laps, World of Outlaw drivers have just dumped a local because they're everywhere, all over the track.
Right.
And they're like, I'm tired of your shit.
Yeah.
Basically. And they just send them off the end. I mean, I've seen the guys go flipping. They don't care. They're like, this is how I make my living, and you're trying to F me up?
Right.
No, this isn't how this works today.
Right.
You don't even belong here. Get out of the way.
Right.
And I've been the recipient times, that's because it's so cutthroat. I did an ASCS race at my home track, and we just missed the setup, and I got spun into the infield by Johnny Herrera. I mean, he was a World of Outlaw driver and a big ASCS driver, and he was tired of me being in his way, and into the infield I went. I was just like, oh, well, I guess I wasn't fast enough today.
and they literally, like you said, they can't afford to come out of that event without points. The guys who make half the races, the amateur guys, it's like, well, I know you want a trophy, and I know you paid to be here, but this guy's livelihood, literally, I mean, all amateur racers are aspiring to be there, but the guys who are already there need to protect that. I mean, it's a dangerous business because it's so fickle. I
had to learn that. I had to learn, because I was always so considerate, and then after a while, my crew chief just was like, we talked about this before, it's your racetrack too.
Right.
And that's where I learned, okay, you know what? I'm going to be more aggressive, and if I want that spot, you're going to have to get out of, I'm just going to move you.
Yes. John Hill, I do agree with this to an extent. He typed in, fast drivers have no heart. They have killer instincts. And to an extent, I completely agree with you. Like the difference between the good guys and guys who bring home championships sometimes are I will kill you to win, right? I don't mean literally. I mean, but
the instinct though is
and I think that's true of all sport. Like when you look at like any competitive sports, the guys who play and maybe even professionally, but the guys who are all-star team or are the super yes, they have killer instinct that I can achieve that in rare moments, but it's not my instinct. Like I don't walk onto the track with the mentality of I will do whatever it takes to win. I walk onto the track with more of a, and this is sad. I'm actually faulting myself, because we're talking sports here. Hey, let's have a good game. Let's all be fair, have a good game, let the best man win. And champions are like, best man, F that, I'm winning.
Mine was always situational in the fact that, like, when I used to run track and cross country, when I stepped on the line, I looked at everybody and said, you're not beating me today. Ain't no way that's going to happen. And the change was getting into a sprint car humbles you severely just by how much you feel like you're hanging on. So then it becomes more of, these guys have been racing for 20 plus years that are around me. I don't want to piss them off and put them in a position where they don't feel like they can race me fairly and cleanly. And David mentioned it. I'm in the same boat where I will race you as clean as, if we're running for position, I will race you as clean as anyone. I'm not going to put you in the fence. I'm not going to spin you out. But if you start doing some stupid shit, I'm going to give it back to you. I'll remember that. And I've walked up to people that are probably twice my size, probably not the smartest thing ever. But in that moment you get pissed and you're just like, hey, I'll remember that. Just you wait. I literally, one time I told a guy, I was just like, I've got a bunch of wings in my trailer. And I don't mind replacing the parts of my car. The next time you get around me, I will put you in the fence. I will wear you out if that's how you're going to drive me.
So I hope you brought a lot of wings too.
Sometimes people just, I don't know if they just don't know where they're at on the track or whatever. But anyway, that understanding that those types of situations and relationships, you don't get to know those things until you put yourself in it, is, I guess, the bigger point.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and last night, that was exactly part of my testing. I was like, I can't test these moments during the race, but I need to know, because this is a different race. Watkins Glen is a little different. It's very hard to pass at Watkins Glen.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't Le Mans where, Le Mans, you can always exhibit a little patience, because you're one corner away from a straightaway from, that's a mile and a half long. So you can just have at anybody if you're quicker, faster car. At the Glen, you could spend 3 laps behind a really slow car. So it's like, well, I don't want to be there in my racing. I want to win. I want our team to win. And if we're spending 3 laps getting by a car that we should be able to get by quickly, and so yeah, that was more than ever. I think that's why I'm kind of dwelling on the point, is that more than ever I was testing those boundaries for a race than I ever normally do. We talk about the truck race, and it's like, well, I kind of know how that's going to play out. I know how to drive those trucks. Give me some laps so I'm comfortable, inside, outside line, whatever, I'm good to go. In this case, well, no, I need to know exactly how much understeer I'm going to fight going up the hill, because if I'm drafting you, trying to get around you on that little tiny straightaway before the bus stop, I need to know where I need to be at the beginning of my draft run. I need to know how much understeer I'm going to fight, because it's really easy to hammer that right wall. It's a nothing turn, and it's like that wall comes up so quick if you get understeer. And I want to know that. I want to know from a second back to 3/10 back. And, it was really, I think for me, for this race coming, and I guess I'm saying this for everybody out there, but I feel like the situational awareness practice was as important as hot lapping and the pursuit of speed for this race in particular. And I wouldn't say that. At Daytona, I wouldn't take that approach. At Daytona, I'd be like, whatever, you get around people. It's pretty easy. Watkins Glen, totally different animal. Daytona, I could hot lap every day and then get into the race, and the only thing I'm really going to have to figure out is braking zones into one. Other than that, I should pretty much be able to adjust to traffic. But at Watkins Glen, it's a nightmare. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to the race. Now I don't have to talk about it. We've talked about Watkins enough that I'll just, tonight at 6 o'clock I'm on the air, or 6:40 is the race start. Me, Stan Donnet, the cousin of Dan Donnet, and Moses Choi are going to be doing the redemption race because we all wrote off and swore we'd never drive the Daytona prototype again. But it's
That's funny.
one of my favorite cars on iRacing, so it's been burning. So we were like, let's do a redemption race. We'll do it. Nobody else wants it. We'll jump in. So I'm very excited. Thank you, Moses and Stan, for joining me in the car.
Nice.
Tonight at 6.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Anyway, should we move on to the news?
Why not? We're only 45 minutes in.
I know. I actually have to take a teeny tiny little break, I'm upset to say. I'm not sure when I should throw it in, but there's no way I'm making it to this end of the show without leaving the seat for a minute. I need a pit stop for.
Take this, but okay.
I need a pit stop for the Beyond the Sim is what I'm getting at.
Pit stop for a pit stop.
Yeah. Why don't we get into the news, and at some point I'll take a little bit.
Jeez. All right.
I thought I did all my preparations. All right.
Flipping hilarious. Okay. So we're going to start with Codemasters. They're just showing off a few things. Mainly, they're giving us a nice picture of that Ferrari. I'm looking forward to this.
I'm
cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, well, and see, all right, grid. It's coming to grid.
It's the worst thing ever. It's coming to grid.
I'm less like I would have rather seen like a 76 Camaro with a push bar on the front. But that's me. So like to me it's like, wait, that's a real race car. You already have other, but I guess they don't have a GT, and maybe that's what we have to observe here. GT3, GTE, GT racing is really doing well right now, whether you're talking Blancpain, whether you're talking IMSA. IMSA's been doing pretty well with the GT class again. And it seems like that class is gaining popularity. So Assetto Corsa is going after that. iRacing has a pretty good presence in that. And now maybe Grid is sort of like, well, maybe we, because you look at Codemasters, Formula One, Rally, and then, what's their next discipline, right?
Well, yeah, and you think about back in the day, they were known for their touring car stuff.
Right. So,
I mean, that was some of my favorite games was the touring car stuff. So I think they're probably trying to round out this game. I believe will have tin top stuff. So your GT cars, they showed off the more classic cars. They'll probably have some touring cars in there. I don't remember if I saw those or not because it's been a little bit since I've looked. But there's they just put out a teaser or a trailer with hanging on with the C7R racing around. So yeah, we'll see how that one goes.
I think if I were Codemasters, being that they are such a super house of gaming, they're a huge development team at this point. They could have put a different title on it and made a tin top, straightforward racing game that's not as dry as F1 2019. And Rally is its own entity on its own. And then they could have still made Grid and had that like total gateway game that is going to get in the non-racing fans as well as the racing fans, make them Codemasters fans, make them upgrade to a dirt rally or to a GT3 game, whatever they'd call it. Versus, again, I think a Grid is being a little more fun, a little less dry, and it feels like they're moving it. Now, I have no real information to base this on, but it feels like they're moving it more towards that straightforward racing title than it used to be.
Yeah, do you remember, I don't know if you played it, but the Pro Race Driver 2? That's probably one of my favorite games from Codemasters, along with like the old Toka games, Dirt. There's a couple Dirt titles, and now we've got, Dirt Rally. But the one that's always kind of stood out to me besides the original Toka touring was Pro Race Driver 2. I thought was one of the most fun games for years that I had played because it had kind of that silly story to it where you've got this crew chief that's always giving you a little bit of crap, but he's on your side, and you've got the media person, but you ran all these different disciplines, including rally and ice, and you just had a plethora of different cars to, DTM, V8 Supers, touring cars. There might have even been, I know the end was a Formula car, but there might have been some lower Formula cars in that. It's been so long since I played it, but I thought that was always a cool set. It wasn't super, bleeding edge sim, but it was close enough at the time that you could have fun with it.
Sure. That was the one, and like your crew chief would be like, now we got this ride for you. And it was like, I don't remember the exact wording, but it was like, it really built it up too each time. And they changed disciplines. And it was like this almost like an honor as the driver, because if you're really immersed in the career mode of that mentality, it was like, okay, I was doing this, but now they're calling me over to do this. And it's like, oh, how cool. I'm living the Boris Said life. I always use Boris Said as my example.
Yes.
Driving every discipline there is, and it's like, that's the dream to me, just drive as many types of race cars I possibly can. That's the real bucket list for Shaun and racing. I don't know if I don't know. My attention span is pretty limited. So, like, even in the racing world, it's like, well, how many seasons of IndyCar would I want to do before all of a sudden I'm like, I have enough money and enough fame here. I want to run Le Mans, right? We see drivers do that kind of thing. And it's like, well, my version would be, once I have enough fame and fortune, I just want to run a different discipline every weekend, to be honest with you. I want to be at the Baja 500 this weekend, and I want to be at, in Europe running an F3 car the next weekend. That would be living life. That's living life. So anyway, that's cool. It's a beautiful looking Ferrari.
Yeah.
Gotta love that.
It is a Ferrari.
It's a Ferrari. Race room, Nürburgring right now. I mean, we could just make a blanket statement. Nürburgring is where it's at.
Sure.
You've got race room with the Race Room Cafe. They've got a special event going on, but they're going to have a big race for everybody. So kind of like in honor, I guess, of the 24. But it'll be streamed. All drivers on the leaderboard will be invited to race on the server on the 30th. So I guess you have to go post a time to get...
Yeah, you have to go qualify so that they can put you in. I believe they split you up into groups depending on the class of the car that you're running.
2.4 hour race. So that's pretty cool. And they had a bunch of pro drivers over at their little cafe. So real life drivers, the FIA WTCR drivers were over there from Oscaro and from Volkswagen, turning some laps. That's the same guy. I think that's Oscaro. What is Oscaro? I always hear that name. I don't know what that is. What else? What else, Billy?
Interesting little blurb from motorsport.com. You can go read the article yourself. But just to cover it briefly, in for F1 2019, drivers have the small chance, the slight possibility, based on performance, that they could move teams mid-season. So that should bring up some interesting stories, I would think.
I like that.
How did yours compare with mine? It's something I always liked in the NASCAR games. I think it was 2003 or 2004, one of those. Drivers would retire.
Right.
And leave a real seat that was open, and you could end up, after so many seasons, you could actually end up abandoning your team and jumping ship and moving to that team, which I always thought was really kind of a cool idea. So it sounds like you're going to get roughly the same thing. Drivers may get let go. I don't know if you're going to be able to swoop in or if they're going to use another driver to move into their place, how that's going to work. But it would be interesting to see if, didn't matter what the driver was, if they were underperforming and then there was a driver below them that was performing better, then that driver gets, they get swapped.
Yeah.
Or you might be able to jump into that seat and they're going to take your seat. So I don't know how in depth that's going to work, but
well, hopefully
that's kind of a cool idea.
At this point in time, I have to compare F1 2019 to all the Madden titles, right? That's my big joke is, well, if they put one out every year and now it's about career mode. My brother's playing a FIFA season, and he started out as like a real junior league in the Premier League, and he's graduated his team up to the Premier League, and his player is now worth like $50 million a year, some obscene amount of money, but he's only getting paid like $5,000 a month from his team because it's the contract from the little, and he's been requesting every season. He requests a trade so that he can get the money. And you don't need the money in the game to do it, but he's just like trying to play the living the life aspect of the career mode, and it will not let him out from his team. And it's like, well, that sucks because he should be. If you're let's face it, if you're running on one of the crap F1 teams and you're finishing 10 positions ahead of where your teammate is, chances are you're going to get picked up by one of the big 3 teams in the coming seasons. That's the way F1 typically works. And, there's always somebody in that top 6 drivers who's going to get demoted, essentially. And that's part of it. So that's great to see that in this game. Hopefully they do it well and it won't be like FIFA or Madden, where it doesn't actually work all that well. All right, I'm going to read this story and then I'm going to hand it over to you to the next one as I disappear for a moment.
How about I read this story and you just take a running
head start?
Whatever you're going to do. Yeah.
Should I show this one and then put it on the next one?
Yeah, just throw up KartCraft and I'll just hit on it briefly here.
Okay.
So one of the nice things about KartCraft is their constant updates to the sim. And this is no different. They've now released Atlanta Motorsports Park. I've heard a lot of good things. I have not had a chance to try it yet. This is a company that I think is doing early access correctly, in my opinion. Released it for a low price, but gave you a nice amount of content to begin with. And they just keep getting better. They've improved the physics and the handling, how the carts are taking the curbs. As we can see, I don't know if, well, you guys may not be able to see it, but I can see it where it says fixes, updates, and tweaks. They've updated to a new Unreal Engine. They've fixed spinning chain bug. They've fixed incorrect vehicle bounds causing erratic AI behavior. Data logger shift lights now function correctly. The steering wheel can now be hidden in cockpit view for those of you that hate driving with the cockpit. That's a thing. So, or not cockpit, but the wheel on in cockpit view. So I just think that these guys are doing a really solid job on how this sim is coming together. I enjoyed it, and I haven't touched it in a while just because I haven't had time. But now with the new track and their past changes to the handling model, I've heard nothing but good things out of it, and it's nice to see it progress along in this manner.
Absolutely.
Hey, look, you're back.
Yeah, I can't decide if that was unprofessional or if that was just very 2019. Like, hey, this is.
Or are you saying 2019 is unprofessional?
Yes, I am saying that actually.
Okay,
I think the world of entertainment has changed drastically, and everything's become so reality showed out that hey, I got to take a leak. I'll be right back.
You did.
All right. Did you finish KartCraft?
Yeah, unless you have anything else.
No, I guess the only thing I have is that I'm a little embarrassed that I played it a long time ago and I haven't gone back to it, and I should have gone back to it by now. So that's all I have to say about that.
I have not tried it in a while, but I've heard lots of good things. I just have not had a chance to, and now that they've got a new track, I think I'm just... Here's my issue. Is that I usually don't like to cover things in early access as far as giving big impressions like, oh, it's doing this now, just because it changes so frequently, or it could be huge changes. It's not like, to me, in my opinion, it's not like something releasing normally and then it gets some bug fixes and updates and on down the line, and then they have like a major DLC or content update way down the line that you can cover at another point. So I kind of equate this to maybe like an iRacing where they have a build for the next season.
Right.
And then they have a few little hot fixes and bug fixes and that kind of thing. But for the most part, that's what you're going to get. Where early access is typically more of, okay, that didn't work. We need to, here's the next iteration.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Oh, and so they can completely change the game.
Yeah. So it's really hard for me to, it doesn't age well. How about that? And so I don't typically do any sort of big thoughts, review, impressions on early access stuff. KartCraft is one of the very few that I've bought into And just because once they hit AI and a few other things, I was like, you know what? I'll spend the $20. To me, that's worth the $20, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. I'm going to give it a shot.
Right.
And I wasn't disappointed. So that's kind of why I don't do a video on it or anything like that. So there's not like a huge impetus for me to try every iteration that they come across.
Right.
Or that they put out, rather.
Sure. That makes total sense. And again, as a reviewer, it's very difficult because early access is maybe when they shouldn't be judged. I just realized that Atlanta Motorsport is a Herman Tilke design. Did you mention that part?
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Now I need to go drive it because I got to see if
I was
it's
going
like
to say that'll be interesting to see if
if you can tell.
Feels very Tilke like.
Wow, it's like Coda. That's a Tilke, right? They're all Tilke. All the modern ones, right?
I give up on those.
They're like a 1.5 mile oval track in the truck series.
That's a good analogy, though. I mean, theoretically, that's not unfair.
No, it's like, wow, here again, huh? Oh no, you're in a different state. Sure feels like I'm still here.
A random call sign says the only thing that gives it out are the stripes.
Yeah.
So hopefully it doesn't feel like a Tilke track then.
Just the paint on the ground.
There we go. Because I'm more of a person that likes the natural elevation changes and stuff like that.
Yes.
So.
Which, for me, if I were to like start listing my favorite tracks, that's like the iconic feature of all of them. Laguna, Sears Point, Nordschleife, Spa. It's like natural terrain tracks, all of them. All right,
moving on to some esports stuff here. We got quite a bit going on.
Yeah, this is good news. On Monday's show, I think it was, this bubble bursting thing in esports, we have to keep our eye on it because there's just more and more popping up every day. We have a few stories talking about more and more popping up every day. I've said it, I'm going to say it again. I feel like we're a little safer than the rest of them. We talked about this, but our direct correlation to these series, these sports, the sponsors, the companies within. Anyway, iRacing is bringing back, or they're renewing, I guess is a better word, the iRacing World of Outlaws. Morton Buildings Late Model World Championship returns for 2019. Is Morton Buildings the real sponsor of the real life version of this series? I don't know.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So they've got that hand in hand. You've got prize money, 25,000 purse in a 10 race championship. So now 3 of the 4 Rally has a championship as well. They have a championship in money paying in multiple divisions across the board.
So this is an interesting trend where I think last year everything was running simultaneously or close to it. And this kind of bleeds into a topic I want to bring up later, so I'm just going to briefly touch on this. I find it interesting that now they're just breaking it into seasons.
Right.
iRacing build seasons, basically, rather than, one long drawn out and everything runs at the same time kind of thing.
Right.
So I find that interesting. I got to sneeze.
Well,
excuse me. Holy cow.
Bless you.
Thank you.
To an extent, something else that you and I have talked about over the last period of time doing these shows, but that we're actually kind of starting to see the beginnings of the trickle down to where you're having these lower series where your big guys can't devote the energy to go after this championship if they're playing in the big one, which means that leaves this one to everybody else to fight out, and, we're still at that top rung only.
Well, isn't Bergeron in the peak antifreeze, or am I mistaken?
I can't remember.
I thought he was in the peak antifreeze, but
he might be running in both.
Yeah, I'm sure people will correct me if I'm wrong, but he won the sprint car championship.
Well,
I think Bergeron's in. He either was or is in the NASCAR, and they've got it just situated enough where one's Monday night and then peak antifreeze is Tuesday night. So I just thought that was a little interesting that. Well, we can still have people kind of cross over.
We can still have our, what do they call the truck guys when like Kurt Busch goes and runs the trucks?
Oh, the ringers, the cherry pickers.
Yeah, so it'll start appearing like that. I know Mitchell DeJong was running in the open wheeled world championship simultaneous to running the
The
team's
rallycross
championship
last year.
and the
Yeah.
rallycross.
Mhm.
And he was in first in two of them and second in the third, I think, which is just amazing. So, but good news, more and more money paying
Yeah,
events.
I think it's going to be a fun. I well, okay, I don't want to curse it. I hope that the action is as good as the sprint car stuff was this year. Or this last season. Like, I cross my fingers. Hopefully these guys, again, last year I didn't think was very good. I think people were just driving over the top of each other. I'm hoping that they've got a core group of drivers that are going to really put on a good show and show everybody like how exciting and fun this can be, even on an esports. I don't mean that as a derogatory statement. I mean, even as like it's lesser. I'm just saying in this arena as opposed to like a sports car or a open wheel, like a Formula One style esport. I'm hoping these drivers can put on a good show.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And the better we put on a show, the more it prevents the bubble burst, if there is one to come as well.
Yeah, well, right. We want to have some legitimate. English is not working today. Legitimacy to what we're doing, and if we can show that you can draw some direct correlations between real life and this thing, then they're going to want to stick with it more, I would think.
Yep.
From a sponsor perspective.
Yep. Yeah, they're going to embrace and push. And then, in the case of like Heat, where we see they're actually starting to take them to the real life events. So where it's partially an online competition like we know in Simracing, they are starting to put it in front of their audience. I could see that definitely going on with some of the Outlaw stuff too. Where they're like, hey, well, we're going to have the grand finale in conjunction with the real life finale, and do a whole thing there. I think we'll see more of that coming off of it. So, in addition to that, Project Cars has announced their next version of the G Challenge, the Logitech Mclaren Esport. I think I mentioned a while ago from the Mclaren perspective, but now this is coming straight from Project Cars with Logitech, with the details of what it's going to take, with the finals in Paris. So again, we're seeing another one of these real-life, in-person competitions, which means, I don't know the exact... Sometimes they give you enough money where it's on you to pay for your travel, but like last place pays enough to make it worth your while to go to the event. So you might have to ask mom for a loan to fly to Paris and put yourself up, but you can be guaranteed that your prize money will be enough to reimburse mom for those expenditures. And then if you do well, obviously you can come home wealthy. And then in other cases, they actually just fly you and put you up, which, like, I think in Gran Turismo, which we're going to talk about in a second, I think that's more the style because you can tell the way they're keeping the group as a group. They're not just all showing up independently. I don't know how this is going to play out, but this is just the beginning. So you're going to have a North American, European, and Asia Pacific competition with all of the people winning their way into what's going to be another one of the biggest. This will be the Project Cars pinnacle esport at this point.
So I just clicked on, for the heck of it, the North American one, and it looks like it's in unison with Acrovision. I think you were just talking about him the other day.
Yep.
And the car is going to be, it appears, the McLaren 650S GT3. Their little intro just says, do you have what it takes to go pro? Compete online against the best Project Cars 2 racers in the USA and Canada to earn your way into the Logitech G Challenge Global Final. With a spot in the finals, that's a lot of final. The 2019 McLaren Shadow Project on the line. The winner of the McLaren Shadow Project will go on to earn a professional contract with the McLaren Shadow Esports team. Over $10,000 in cash and prizes will be up for grabs over the 8 qualifiers and regional finals as we look to send the fastest PC and fastest PS4, interesting omission there, racers in our region onto the global finals to compete against finalists from Europe, Asia, and Latin America for the title of G Challenge World Champions. So like I said, you're going to run the 650, and then they list off the prizes down here. Like I said, I was just curious. I wanted to see what this was. So it says compete for cash, Logitech G gaming gear, and a spot in the USA regional finals in 8 independent G Challenge USA qualifier events. The top 3 PC racers and the top 2 PS4 racers from each qualifier event will advance to the USA regional finals, where the top PC and PS4. Don't have to say that every time.
Why no Xbox?
Well, and it's interesting that they're taking 3 PC and 2 PS4.
That is.
I wonder what the reason for that is. 8 online qualifier races. Says first place gets 250, second place gets 150, third place gets 100. Top 3 PC, top 2 PS4 finishers will receive a spot in the USA Regional Finals. 1 online regional final. First place PC and PS4 gets $1,000 each, plus a Logitech G Ready to Race product bundle, G29, G920. Okay.
Yeah.
Threw me for a little bit of a loop here on that one. A PlaySeat Evolution LGC edition and a G935 headset, entry into the G Challenge Grand Final, and then a travel package for 2. Here you go. Travel package for 2 to the Logitech G Challenge Grand Final. So you don't even have to ask mom anymore.
Question is, who are you going to bring with you?
Well, your mom.
My mom? My mom will ruin it.
I don't know. Mom, stop staring at me while I'm trying to compete with my friends in the esports race.
I cannot have my mom anywhere near. No offense. I love my mom. But like when I was like 15, I had to have my mom not come to sporting events anymore. It's like,
really?
Yeah. It didn't work well. I don't need anybody or I don't need anyone around me. When it's better if I'm not thinking about anybody else or seeing anybody else or hearing their voice or any of that. Same thing with karting. Like my brother, I can have my brother everywhere I go. But other than that, it's like, no, I don't like crowds. I don't like eyes on me. I really don't.
Oh man, then you can like racing dirt track is like everybody watches you. I mean, you're crammed in this. It's basically a, gladiator stadium, and you go out for single car qualifying, everybody's watching you. And if you F up like I have done, everybody gets to see it. And
that's a lot. That's a lot.
And I'm pretty lucky that my dad has basically been in almost everything competitive I've ever done. So, when we were racing RC cars, he was obviously helping because I was a kid. But then when I started running track and cross country, my parents and my dad would take me out to do runs in the morning and practice, and we would develop strategies and workout programs. And then when I started racing the big car, like he was there helping me, with the big car. And even when I went karting on the road racing stuff, he was right there, like putting it in. I'm pretty lucky in that regard. So I don't know what it's like not to have somebody go.
Oh, yes. No, see, all my racing was very private. When I was running the open wheeler, it was like nobody cared. We were just on a track with nobody, Kart racing isn't exactly packing the stands in, so it was like mostly just friends, family. Lemons racing, that's even worse.
I mean,
no, it's almost all private. The other thing, I'm putting out the bounty, guys. So signups are on right now. The first event for this Logitech thing on the PC or the PS4 is June 23rd, 2 days from now. So that's Sunday. The first track is Laguna Seca. So if you're watching the show, you've probably raced with me, which means we've probably been at Laguna Seca together, because that is a very used track. You've probably driven the 650S GT3. So even if you don't think you can make it, I would love to see some screenshots of where you stand on the leaderboard. Show us that you went out and did it. I'd like to get a run in. Maybe on Sunday I can do such a thing. Sign up now is going on. Love to see all the pit crew. Everybody get out there and let's crash those leaderboards.
So if I'm reading this right, and I don't know that I am, you can sign up for each one of these. So if you don't finish in the top 3 or the top 2, depending on which one you do, you still have a chance on the 30th.
Right, and qualifier number 2.
And then 14th, 28th, 11th, 25th. So you have 8 chances to try to get one of those 2 or 3 spots.
One of them is Indianapolis Road. Oh, road. I didn't see the map. It looks like the oval on their little map. I was gonna say anyone can do that. Anyway, all right. Well, that's
Yeah,
good.
well, it looks like you're running the 650 every time.
Yeah, which makes
So,
sense.
okay. Well, there you go. You have 8 opportunities depending on. Okay, here's the $1,000 question. Do you think which one do you think is going to be more tough? The 2 spots for PS4 or the 3 on PC?
That's a really interesting question. I could make such an argument for both sides of this one.
I kind of did the same thing when I was reading it. I was like, it's interesting. So I wonder if there's a reason
You have to think there'll be
behind that
so many
decision.
more people in the PS4 version, right?
Possibly. I don't know.
But you're also talking about maybe already being to the point of having a steering wheel, which then might switch that to the PC. And I wonder if anybody's going to do anything with the controller. That's a great question. I think that the PC side is going to be very cutthroat, and you're going to see like the top 3 within like thousandths of a second of each other. Like literally identical times almost might be the top 3. Like somehow on these kind of competitions, you find the top guys all hit like what is literally like virtually the best you can actually drive the track. like there's no way to actually make the car faster than a .123, and 3 guys in a row had a .123. I don't know. I think that it's gonna be tough though, because even though we're talking about casually here amongst average sim racers, every single sim racing team has this on their radar. So all of the big teams are going to be there. All of the biggest names are going to be there, at least seeing which one of their drivers can be the P cars. You know, that's the thing. It's the P car disciplined drivers are going to definitely do better too. I don't think you're going to see as much crossover for this competition. Like, look at how many like iRacing sim racers converted to F1 when the money got that serious.
Sure.
You know, and I don't think we've seen the prize money. So the grand prize, whoops, we have that here. What is the grand prize? Did they tell us?
Well, to be a McLaren Esports driver.
That's a pretty good grand prize, isn't it? So this is like a race.
This is a really long audition is
Yes,
what it is.
thank you. That's the word, audition. It's an audition. Anyway, I think that'll be fun. I'm going to put a run in. I'm going to sign up for the PC version and see just how cutthroat it is.
I almost want to do both just to see if there's any difference.
Like what number am I on the board?
Right. Like what differences between the two. I'm probably not a whole lot. If I'm trying to be truthful with myself, probably not a whole lot. And I'm not the best hot lap person, so this is not a competition. John Hill kind of mentions it. I have a slightly different take. Is I would like to see them, if you're not going to do a race for each of these qualifiers, right? At least make it so that it's a race long qualifier, not somebody who can turn the best lap, because you're not qualifying for position necessarily. You're qualifying to get an entry.
Right.
So what I would like to see is whatever length of race they're going to run in the finals, that's the length of race you have to submit for your qualifier.
Sure. I could see a scenario that I'd like. This comes off of like hot lap hump day thinking. So you let them run unlimited laps, right? Because we want the best of the best. But then even the finale for each qualifier could and should be like a live top 10, where now you have 3 laps to back up your time, you know.
Oh, so it's like a world record kind of thing.
Yes.
So you have to back it up.
Yeah, you make it into the fast 10.
That's an interesting take.
And then you have to put it on the spot with a little bit of more, you know, because if I can run 500 laps under any conditions in my own home, that's one thing. But can you do it?
But under pressure, right.
Yeah.
Or could we do it like IndyCar, like Indianapolis, where you submit a qualifying time. If you want to submit a new one, that other one gets thrown out the window.
Right.
You don't get to fall back on your best. It's whichever one is
Right.
your last.
Yes.
That would also be a pressure cooker as well. Me personally, I like your idea. I like that idea. But I also like the idea of possibly you could incorporate it all, right? You could make it so where these guys have to run a 10-minute race and it's your overall 10-minute race. How many laps, and then how long did it take you to complete those laps? And then that puts you in, like you said, the top 10, and then you've got to perform in front of everybody else, live. And when you do those qualifiers, it's the last one you did.
Yep.
So you have to gamble. Am I throwing out my time that I just did, which was pretty good, because I'm just outside or I'm just inside the top 3? Now I have to make that. Do I try again? I would like stuff like that rather than just you do one great lap and you're automatically a hero. I don't mind that for qualifying for an individual race. That's fine.
Right.
What I don't care for is when you're trying to get entry into something. Your fastest lap is not a good measuring stick, in my opinion.
No, and you can get a lot of guys.
Good race and a good driver.
Yeah, a lot of those guys will fall on their face in the big event, because yes, they got an incredible lap, but they crashed the other 499 times, and that was the one time they actually were able to keep the car. Like let's face it,
it's a magic lap.
Yeah, because in order to be the best, you probably need to be driving a car that's on the edge, like throttle oversteer, off throttle oversteer, like all the aliens want. And, maybe they are just looping it on half of their attempts. But that one time they hang on is going to just be a blistering lap. But then come the race event, you can't even set your car up like that, perhaps. Anyway, cool event. It's going to be another big one. And again, all of our big sims are doing it at this point. Everybody. Every single sim now. Live for Speed doesn't have an esport, but they're not really a current sim. All right, what else?
We got some Gran Turismo stuff going on this weekend.
I'm just going to scroll. There's too much to even talk about right now. This is at Nürburgring, right? So this goes along with the project cars. I'm sorry, the race room stuff that's going on over there. They've got their normal, the manufacturers and the Nations Cup events going on. So that's where you're going to see all the big names that we talk about all the time going at it there live. And then they also have the little or one-off exhibition competition. Is that the right wording?
Yeah, it's an exhibition show with the GR Supra GT Cup exhibition match.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that one now. I can't find it. Here's a picture.
It's just a little ways down.
Yeah, there it is. The GR Supra Cup. So they are going to have a whole stage and a whole bunch of racing. And, I saw pictures of, the guys getting their hotel rooms. Here's Nicholas Voon in the bathroom, of all places. He's going to get his stream cut off. He can't film in the bathroom, buddy. That is his bathroom, though, of his hotel room.
You can film in your own bathroom, I guess.
But yeah, lots of cool pictures of the guys showing up, getting to meet Kazunori. And this is going to be, to an extent, GT Sport, you could say, has really been the leader on the esport thing. Their GT Academy kind of is the original. There are other things that went on. Intel did the GT Masters. There have been others, but I have to give GT credit as really kind of being the first legitimate esport with something very significant on the line year after year. And now we're seeing the guys we know by name again.
Yeah, I would say F1 2019 and GT Sport are kind of the two front runners in that regard. I think.
Yeah. So anyway, lots of racing going on this weekend.
Yeah.
This is going to be
lots of stuff to keep you entertained.
Yeah. All right, and then our final news of the day, Billy. This is on you.
Yeah, credit to David Land on YouTube. If you're not familiar with him, he's really into IndyCar and sports cars. He does do NASCAR stuff as well. He used to be really into the gaming side. Now he's transitioned over to just covering motorsports he'll do a little bit of gaming, but he really has made a transition, and it's made his channel skyrocket. So he definitely has an opinion. I like that, and not always agree with that. But when do you ever agree with anybody or everything anybody says? He had happened to mention on Monday this tweet, and I was curious to see if anybody else picked up on this, which I didn't see. And I'm not saying Shaun, I'm just saying in the gaming space in general.
Yeah, this totally flew under my radar. I had heard
So
nothing of
Adam
it.
Stern reported that IndyCar is poised to step up its involvement in video games slash esports in the coming months as it's working internally to set up a new strategy for the space, per CEO Mark Miles. And then his own anecdote says IndyCar has been relatively unengaged in this space for a while, but it wants to now change that. So this leads into I think, a bigger discussion. Do you really think IndyCar has been that unengaged? Because they've been in Forza Motorsport, they've been in Project Cars 2, and they've also been in iRacing. So how unengaged, because they don't have their own specific game like
Right.
we had IndyCar 2, what was it, 2005, which was released in 2004 but featured 2003 cars, something like that. So there was two specific IndyCar games back then. Those are the last two specific games.
Mm-hmm.
So because they don't have their own title anymore, does that mean they are less engaged than before?
No, I think they've just been less engaged in the esport direct affiliated series. But you're right; they're in virtually every game in some capacity.
I think they're
Uh,
an R Factor 2 as well, aren't they?
yeah, there are a
Is
lot
that,
of.
am I wrong in that? I think
No,
they're an R Factor 2.
I think they are. Yeah, it's not hard to find the modern IndyCar in sim at all, including liveries, like in the case of Project Cars. iRacing, you've got the car, sort of. It's a little bit dated at this point, not terribly dated, but a little bit. Um, but yeah, they haven't, and I kind of wonder how are they going to fill the esport hole because of all the sims that come to mind. Does anything have like near complete representation?
As far as I know, no,
And it's going to be
that
really
I'm
hard.
aware of.
Yeah, and I mean, and this is an conversation that me and John Hill have all the time. Like, come on, iRacing, where are the IndyCar tracks? You know, Long Beach as a tech track could be,
Right.
you could be angry about if you want. Like, but the list is pretty long of missing IndyCar tracks. Now, IndyCar does bounce their schedule around quite a bit, so it's hard to stay with them too. Certain things are written in stone, but they do move around. It's not always the same schedule. I don't think Project Cars has all the tracks either that they need.
I don't think there's one that actually has all of it, if I'm remembering correctly. So take that into account, right? So these are incomplete experiences. So let's go off of what the rumor is. We'll call it a rumor because I don't have a verified source myself. What direction do you think they're going to go? Do you think they're going to bring out like a Formula One, like an F1 2019 experience where it has its own esports competition? Or are they going to use somebody else like an iRacing or the next iteration of Project Cars or Forza as their premier marketing push within a game and an esports package?
Man, I'd call Risa and I'd be like,
Ooh.
we want a dedicated IndyCar sim title with our
Oh, that would
current.
be really cool.
Yeah, and then with Risa, it's like, well, it could be Project Cars or R Factor 2, I guess, because it seems they do both. So
Man, I didn't think about that.
and maybe Risa's already too big, you know, but maybe you find one of these incredible modding teams that have been, you know, getting accolades and put them on the task, and then buy a license from R Factor or Project Cars if that's, you know, if you can run the Madness engine. And then, yeah, I think that's what they need to do, because well, because that seems to be the modern version of it, and it's like it seems that there's a lot of pressure on NASCAR or iRacing for them to fill that list of tracks so that it could be a 1-to-1 for NASCAR. NASCAR Heat came out of the gate with everything because that's the purpose of the title, was to be the marquee naming title. Blancpain with the Assetto Corsa. Now, I don't think they have a complete list of tracks, though, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think they have the entire season.
They don't have this year's set of tracks, if I remember right. I think the 2018 season, oh, man. I think the 2018 season is complete, but the 2019 isn't because they changed one or two tracks. I think it's Zandvoort is, I hope I'm right in that. Zandvoort's coming up in an update or something.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. They'll fill in that because I think there's an obligation with the naming rights title, licensing title. F1 2019 is being released as fast as possible for this whole exact point and purpose.
Brett says just no IndyCar Heat.
3.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
That's really funny.
So do you think they're going to have a dedicated title? Is that the direction you're leaning, rather than teaming up with an iRacing or a Project Cars 2 as it's part of a bigger sim game, however you say it?
I don't think IndyCar has the money for that kind of an expenditure, but maybe they can.
I would agree with that.
But maybe the licensing and the naming rights has enough value that they could partner with somebody, and then it's just a matter of, is it a fill in the hole in the case of iRacing? Like, okay, quick, we'll expedite you these tracks. Whether iRacing double times it on laser scanning or IndyCar laser scans and provides them. I think in iRacing it would be such a slow rollout because of the process to get a new track. Because if you just handed them, like, let's just say you handed them 5 new track scans, how long is it going to take their team to build those 5 tracks? And then are they going to divert all their attention, or are they going to keep filling in, like, the dirt trucks, which is making them money? And so that's where I come back to a third-party studio where it wouldn't necessarily be Kunos or Slightly Mad, but it would be more like a Ritza or one of those. That I think if you went to Ritza with the licensing and the maps, because it doesn't necessarily have to be 3D scanned, at least not out of the gate, that you could probably get them to produce the game if you gave them the license for free. So now IndyCar gets what they want without spending any money. Ritza gets some quality content for some work, but then they get to profit off it or split the profits. I mean, I don't know if IndyCar needs return on their $0 investment either. They need the marketing and exposure more than
it would be interesting to know what the deals are that they made with iRacing and Project Cars 2 and R Factor 2 for the licensing of their cars. And now we're talking about a whole series which envelops tracks.
Right.
So it would be interesting to know what kind of a licensing deal and agreement comes with that, because obviously I've never done this stuff, so I have no idea. I've heard things about iRacing, but I've never seen anything concrete.
Well, and this even kind of overlaps and goes back in, parallel conversation. Did you hear about iRacing trying to buy Indy? I mean, not iRacing, NASCAR trying to buy Indy, ISM.
Okay.
And if I'm a series, I can give you the cars and the drivers, but we don't own the tracks. Like, I think when Andretti goes to them, they sign some contract that gives Indy has as much right to their cars, naming, and sponsors as they do. I'm assuming. But
I'm not sure. I don't know.
But I don't think that they can do the same thing automatically for the tracks. So each track is, licensing.
It would seem that they can't.
So now you need a real big package deal to be able to really silver platter that, which is one of the difficulties. But see, I guess that's the whole point of what we talk about weekly on the show. The times are changing. The IndyCar pack into Forza. I have a hunch that IndyCar wanted that. Like I remember a few editions back
I would agree with that. Yeah.
So like the Cadillac pack for like Forza 4, it was so blatant that Cadillac, as they're really kind of
Right. They had a partnership with them. Yeah.
yeah, I think they literally paid to have those cars made and produced as a pack. And not only did they pay, and now Forza, you get all the money from the DLC, or whatever. And I think that those are the times that are changing. So, like, if an IndyCar went to a track and it's like, look, we know you own your licensing for your T-shirts. We're not trying to step on that business model. What we're talking about is marketing and exposure so that people know your track. That maybe it wouldn't be that hard to get it, but you would need Indy leading the way. It can't be from iRacing trying to a la carte the whole thing. It has to be silver plattered from the people who have a little say or sway in these ways.
Yeah, so John brings up a good point. iRacing does have actual IndyCar drivers that use the sim. So my next question would be, is it doing anything? So in other words, let's say they either in this fictitious world, they partner up with Ritza and they're going to run the esports competition, or they partner up with iRacing and iRacing is going to implement all the tracks and they're going to run their esports competition for IndyCar, right? As a marketing machine, does it only serve the IndyCar audience that's already into IndyCar? Or do you really think that this is going to draw in more people to IndyCar? Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
are they really? If this was released on a console, let's kind of take the sim part out of it. Let's say Codemasters goes back and decides we're gonna make this game, right? They're not totally into the sim. It's more this in between stage where it's a racing game.
Right.
It's fun. It's enjoyable. It's not as bleeding as edge as iRacing, but it still feels good. It's a good driving game. It's released on console, though. If you release something like that on console, is it going to gain any traction with the general gaming audience, or is this just better served to be in a Ritza, iRacing's, R Factor 2, one of those titles that then will hold the esports competition, because you're really not gaining anybody else except for these outliers.
Right.
Pardon me, these outliers that are within the esports racing community that go, hey, that's a good opportunity. I'm just going to move over to the IndyCar program because, well, the competition's just not there yet and I can win.
Right. I'll use Blancpain as my example here. I watch IMSA because I'm North American. I'm aware of Blancpain. So when Assetto Corsa came out with Blancpain series, I was intrigued. So like, now have I watched a race this year because of it? No. But
okay,
I'm 10-20% more intrigued and more knowledgeable of what's going on in the series because of the game. So now they haven't converted me yet, but there was a movement in my mind that series became more important or more relevant to me than before. So I think it can, but that, are you going to move somebody who doesn't care to caring? No. But you might be able to redistribute some of the already there market share.
So it's more of a move for market share than actually using it as a marketing machine to drive new people outside of, I don't know if I'm going to explain this right. Within the sim or esport community, you're going to pull some people.
Yes.
Right? But in a broader sense, you're not going to be able to accomplish, for instance, what the original Gran Turismo did.
Right.
Because so many people bought that game that were not into car racing and racing games at all.
It was bought like a regular game.
It was. Pardon me. So knowing that's, do you think IndyCar understands that Do you think IndyCar knows that that's not going to happen? You're only going to
Right.
pull within this small subset of people. You're going to draw in more here, but are you going to make a NASCAR fan, an IndyCar fan with a video game? Essentially, let's just say it's essentially a video game.
I think that there's this tiny, tiny little amount. Like one of the things that me and John Hill do talk about all the time is how more of these series and tracks need to be building games and sims and getting their licensing out there to get people exposure. So I think during the month of May that there might be a really good conversion rate on anything that says IndyCar on it. Because it's such a big deal that even that dad who never was going to buy a driving game, maybe that is the one and only time when he was at Best Buy, he's like, hey,
that's a good point.
I'm going to pick that up. And then, and this gets back to the importance of the licensing. Well, if once he does it, he enjoyed himself, he can go to the next week's track as well. Now you're on the path, in my mind, of making more of a bond and a lifelong fan.
Yeah, making a fan, yeah.
You know?
I could see that.
But it's a small number, and it's only at those peak, like Formula One's going to get that, IndyCar's going to get that, NASCAR's going to get that. But like Blancpain, I just don't see, you know, now again, let's call it IMSA for the sake of North American market.
Okay.
I don't think an IMSA title is going to make anybody buy it. You know, I think all of the sim
you
racing
could make an argument for would be the 24 Hours of Daytona.
Yes, you're right. You're 100% right. All of a sudden, now it's there. And now maybe they care about next month's track because they got bought in.
So I could see if you did a marketing push in the month that had your biggest series event, the Daytona 500, Indianapolis 500. I guess we could argue that maybe Monaco would be one of the most recognizable things for Formula One.
Sure.
So in those months, if you do that marketing push with a game or a dedicated esports series within a game, maybe that does reach a broader audience and bring people in.
I also think that there's other things. So, you know, getting back to, I'm going to bring this back up, but you know, IndyCar has been relatively unengaged in this space for a while, but it wants to now change that. So for me, when I watch NASCAR and they put Parker Kligerman in the NBC Studios sim to show off driving at Charlotte, and all of a sudden he's showing you how the car gets really loose coming off of 4. I think that translates really well to the fan who's watching as a fan of these guys and the paint jobs and the circus that is NASCAR. But when you educate them, I think it makes it that much cooler. Well, if you can get your average fan to have an understanding by actually driving it, they become even bigger fans. Because now when they're watching the race and they're starting to grasp just how difficult it really is to run in a pack or to handle that particular corner. Why are so many cars dumping it coming out of turn 1 at Indy? You know, all 4 corners look the same to me. Why is one so much harder than the rest of them? You know, and on paper, it shouldn't be, but yet that is the hardest corner at Indy, you know? Or at least it is for me.
No, I would agree. I think that when you have a relationship and an understanding, so I use my first wife as a gauge for that. She knew nothing about racing, right? She only got into racing because I was into racing, and NASCAR was the big thing at the time. And she's like, it's just a bunch of hicks and hillbillies running around in circles. There's nothing to it. These guys, and I'm all, I understand, right? They sound a little crass. They sound a little crude, but these are smart people. And let me give you a little explanation as to why. And I took a NASCAR game at the time and I said, these are all the things they have to think about. And as a driver, these are all the things you have to think about. And it's a strain on the body, the heat, the exhaustion, all these elements, as not just in NASCAR, but every driver has to deal with. I gave her, it's no different than any other sport. When you give somebody some sort of relatable information. So I tried to equate it to her as the when you drive your car, right? When you drive your car, here's how much horsepower it is, and here's how much it weighs. And it kind of feels squishy and floaty because it's supposed to be all about comfort. Now imagine this amount of horsepower and this car weighs this much. And so you try to give them relatable things. And if you can do that, all of a sudden, my wife started watching. And then all it takes is for her to have, for the other person rather, in this case, for her, it was the race was exciting and there was a sponsor she could relate to. And that sponsor was, sounds terrible, sounds so sexist, Tide. She absolutely loved the Tide car. And from there, she started watching, and then she liked Jeff Gordon. She liked Jimmy Johnson. She started liking these other drivers as she went along. But there was a way to give some sort of a relatable information to her so that she could make that decision. And games I'm reading in the chat, Brian, Car Heroes, several people are talking about what got them into watching a real life race, and they're citing a racing game or sim racing as that catalyst, and because it gives you that relatable information. And so maybe that's what I feel a little different about it now, because I don't know that the same effect happens. And the reason I say that is because I remember back in the day, I loved car racing. I had no idea that there was anything called the Japanese sports car stuff. I didn't know anything about that. And then when I played Gran Turismo and I saw these awesome cars that I could play, I'm like, where do these things run? I don't know necessarily if that's the effect modern sims and games have on people, but I do believe there is still an effect. It is just not the same.
Right. I think that, there's so many different sides to this argument. You can look at it from the completely non-fan perspective, like your wife. Like, without a certain amount of, your first wife, without a certain amount of foundation, it's hard to really relate to a sport. Any sport. We could be talking about baseball. You need a little bit of foundation and understanding of the sport to be able to really be that entertained by it. It's not quite the same as going to a concert and listening to music, or going to a theater and watching a play. It's a competition, all sport is, and you kind of have to be aware. They're not telling you the story. You have to know how the game works, otherwise you're kind of lost. And then that next step for me is watching a sport as somebody who's played that sport. Like, and I don't mean just like on the playground, but like, I'll use baseball. I played baseball for like 12 years. I know baseball inside and out. I could score the game. And when I watch and I see a double play being made, I used to play second base. I know what that moment is like. Maybe not at the pro league game, but like when I'm like
but
watching,
you have an idea.
Yeah, and when I'm like, wow, that was a really nice player. That was a really difficult throw, because I know how hard that off-balance throw can be. Or when I see a guy throw it away and people are like, oh, he just sucks. And it's like, dude, you have no idea how hard it is
that is, yes.
Catch, throw, and not get taken out.
I have that same thing when watching racing and people, talking about, well, how did he not miss that? I'm like, you're talking about something that happens like at the snap of a finger, and you've already made a different decision.
Yes. And so through sim, and this is where there is an advantage when they can start converting people using esport as a marketing tool. It makes your fans that much more knowledgeable. And I feel that it makes it more exciting. I prefer to watch sports that I played than sports that I didn't play. Because that insight makes it more entertaining for me. So I think IndyCar needs to do everything. Like, they have had a couple of really good years, but it's been a series that I've been like, wow, how are they going to sustain this? Like, I don't see the names on the cars are not the kind of names that are paying for the budget it takes to race these series and these cars.
Right.
The television coverage is so spotty in terms of being moved around here and there. Sure, when it's Indy, it's the biggest thing in the world. After Indy, where is it? And I just think that they need to do everything they can to pack the stands, to have people watching, to have it be relevant in North America, and to have a future fan base to call upon. Without an esport, I kind of don't see where that future's gonna come. Like, you're a parent, so like, I haven't seen how hard it is to keep kids interested in cars when cars just aren't cool anymore. You know, well, you have a Hellcat. You've changed the rule. You.
Okay, so that's an interesting dynamic, because when I was a kid, I didn't want to do anything but go to my dad's modified and sprint car races. Like, I was crushed when we couldn't go watch dad race. And I loved cars, and so my dad had this old 50 was a 53 Ford pickup. 50s. Crap. He's gonna get mad. I don't remember. This thing, he had gotten in a trade from somebody, and I loved that truck because it was loud and noisy, big old stupid V8 in it, and it was primered. It was just primer gray with, all these spots all over it for the Bondo and everything that the guy gotten from the guy. Dad kind of did some work to it, but he didn't want to put a lot of work into it because it was, for him, he liked the truck enough that it was a point A to point B truck. But I remember getting dropped off at school, and we would go to these, we'd go to the race car parts place and pick up parts for the race car. Because by then, when I was little, when he had me, he stopped owning his own car. He was racing for other people. He was a hired driver.
Okay.
So, but he knew all the parts. He could weld, he could fix anything on the car, he could rebuild an engine. So that's what I spent time with my dad doing. On the flip side, so that's where my interest in cars comes from. On the flip side, my kids were little when I started racing the sprint car. But there was never the same interaction. So they like cars. They're into cars. They're not into racing, though.
Right.
So it's interesting to see, is this ever going to catch on where they get into racing? Because they love cars. They'll tell me their favorite cars and point cars out on the street and stuff like this, but they're not into the racing aspect. So it'll be interesting to see, as they get older, do they ever develop that desire to want to do it, or at least to watch?
Right.
So I don't know. And I don't know if I could hand them a game and get them interested in this instance,
right,
in IndyCar racing.
Right. Like, would they even perceive it as a game? Like, coming from where they come from, which is playing normal games, right?
Yeah, they play all kinds of just normal video games. Yeah. I think the best we did was when my son was really little, we had a Cars game that he loved, and he raced around with the Cars game and everything, but that's about the extent of it all. He dabbles every once in a while. Like, they'll play like the ATV off-road games. That's because they're kind of screwing around doing tricks and crashing into each other and stuff. But I remember I was serious about my racing games when I was little. So, hey, there's no taking the other cars out. We're trying to race as realistically as we possibly can, creating our own rules that the game wouldn't give us.
Right.
So,
see, for me, I think the steering wheel and pedal aspect of sim racing, which to this day is my favorite part. One reason I love sim racing so much in the gaming market is we're the only part of gaming where you can actually talk about and buy peripherals, right? Like flight sim, sure, but other than those two, there's no such thing. Keyboard, mouse, maybe a trackball for the certain, and going back to days as a child and the video arcade, that steering wheel being on top of a game was a different level of interactivity for me than playing Space Invaders or Pac-Man. But now I'm really operating. Like, I just never got that feeling all the way back as a kid. A little joystick never gave me that feeling of intimately being Pac-Man. I never got in the mind of being Pac-Man. I'm not, and
okay, I see what you're saying. Yes. Actually, that would be kind of funny if somebody was like, let me tell you, son, back in the summer of 81, I became the Pac-Man.
You gotta get inside
that joystick Pac-Man. And that button. Well, let me tell you, we became one.
And if you think about it, the modern controller is nothing different than that original, A/B button joystick. There's zero evolution in that respect other than it got portable and in your hands. But with sim racing, we have that interactivity, a gas pedal, a brake pedal, maybe a steering wheel that you can, whether it was the flip games or the drive it proper, either way, it didn't matter. And I can't even remember my point at this moment. Oh, it was just the way those games baited me in, though. But that was part of the big draw, because I found that relationship to sim racing long before I understood cars, long before I understood racing, long before I understood or sim racing had even become anything. But, that's part of what I think makes it so special and maybe missed out, because we don't really have the arcade days changing people's opinions of gaming. The arcade influence on our era of console gaming, there was always an influence from one to the other. It's like, well, I want to be able to play a better game at the arcade for $0.25 than I should be able to play at home. But those days are now gone, so your only evolution of your wisdom in gaming is at home, where you're not going to have those steering wheels baiting you towards the driving games. I guess that was the long, maybe fun story, but long point.
So we've kind of gone full circle. I want to ask you a question. I just posted something for you. I saw this the other day. Since you have driven now in the sim, would you want to go to an off-road truck school in Vegas?
Oh, yeah. When can we go? When can we go? Right?
I saw this the other day, and because everybody was having such a good time with the off-road trucks, I was like, oh, man, this would be a blast.
702-213-9147. I want to go do that, because I've driven. I guess I've never driven a tin top of any worth on a racetrack. I mean, I've driven some Lemons cars and some things that you wouldn't call, but I've never driven a GT3 car, right, or anything like that. But
I've driven a NASA. I've driven, not raced, but I've driven a NASA version of an older Mustang that would kind of be considered like GT3-ish, but I've never gotten to race one.
But again, for me, I'd love to race everything, but I just want to drive everything first. The bucket list is to drive. The dream list, because I will achieve my bucket list. So the bucket list is just to drive a bunch of varieties of car. And the best way to taste and dabble is driving school. I mean, that's the best way to get in a car that you would maybe never get into.
I would love to try this. This would be so much fun. I just thought it was funny because this conversation has kind of been, does it get you into it? And I'm sitting here and we had so much fun with the off-road trucks. And then all of a sudden I saw this, it was like an advertisement or somebody had posted it on Facebook or something. I was like, oh, I didn't even know you could do this. I would totally do that.
Off-road racing and shooting. Now that sounds like a fun game. That sounds like a fun game.
Shoot while you drive in your off-road truck.
Okay, so if you could do it, would you do the trucks, the dune buggy?
Oh, I'm doing the trucks. Everything else. I'm doing the trucks. I mean, the dune buggy, the buggy's cool and the rally car's cool. But if I have a choice of my money, it's kind of like the same thing with me. And if I have the choice, I'm racing a sprint car. But if somebody's going to offer me to drive a mini stock, then yeah, I'll drive that. But if I'm paying I'm putting my money down on running the truck because that seems like it'd just be awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody says you can drive a Ferrari 488 for 80 to 150. Yes, you can, and the starter package of
so here's the funny thing is I don't care about driving a street car. I
right,
just don't. I'm never gonna pay for a school and that's just me. I don't find it exciting in an autocross or even on a controlled track to drive a street car
right.
quickly. I want to drive a race car. Like if I'm going to spend money, I want to drive an actual race car. And I know there are places that you can do that, but if you're going to give me, you know what I'm saying? If you're going to give me the
Sure.
option, I mean, I'm not going to turn down a 488. I'd love to drive one, but if I'm going to have the option of me paying for something, I'm going to pick a race car.
I would rather drive a race prepped Honda S2000 than a street 488 Ferrari.
I'm in the same boat.
You know, it's like
I would be the same way.
you know, but part of that is being that would be done on the track too.
Yeah.
You know, like you know, I live near Beverly. I could go rent a Lamborghini right now. You know, if
Yes.
I want to spend $800 for the day or $1,000 or whatever they charge. And a buddy of mine, we rented a Jaguar. You know, the Super Coupe Jaguar for the day, and it was a lot of fun. But it didn't. It's nothing like getting on a track and even a piece of junk. Man, I'd almost rather run the Volvo, you know, because again, at least it's on a racetrack.
All right.
There are
That might be pushing it a little bit. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that one. I may have to go for the 488 over that thing.
Yep. I think that might be the call. But, I mean, I'd love to go do that exotics. I mean, I'll definitely do that. I mean, I was a passenger once in a 488 Ferrari, and that was cool, but not really. I mean, I didn't get to drive it, so that wasn't as cool as driving it. And even then, we're still on city roads, so what are you going to do? What are you going to... But at exotic racing, it would be on a racetrack at least if you went to one of those racing.
Yeah, I've seen like autocross kind of things and stuff, and I think, you know, I'm not trying to poo-poo on somebody that's done it. That's not my intent, because everybody has a different level of what gets them excited. And for some people, it is street cars.
Right.
Me, I love street cars, but I don't want to really race a street car.
You know, it's funny.
I want to race. If I'm going to race, I want to race a race car. Damn it.
Yes. 20 years ago, my answers would have been different 20 years ago. By the way.
Okay.
Because first time I raced for real, I should have been banned from driving on the real streets because I had no sense of responsibility. I thought the public roadways were my own personal racetrack. And I was a nightmare.
I may or may not have done that with sport bikes. Maybe.
And so it wasn't until I actually got on a racetrack that I'm like, oh, wow, there's a time and place for everything in life, isn't there? Because now I can do this and there's no harm, no foul. I can't go to jail. I can't kill anybody. If I tear it up, it's not my primary. It's the one that is built to be torn apart. And ever since then, it changed everything to the point where, like, I always play, you know, if I buy a lottery ticket, I fantasize about what I'd spend the money on. And exotic cars completely have gone away. Like, I have no desire for any exotic cars anymore because I'm like, what do I need should be a race car for driving in LA? Like, I was next to a guy in a Lamborghini the other day, and it was so funny listening to him try to drive it so it would sound cool when he's only doing 35. But he was doing all sorts of shenanigans with his shifters just trying to get it to snort and pop and make some noise. And it was like, dude, you're doing 35. That's like you're burning up clutch just trying to make your Lamborghini sound cool. And if you do anything with it at all, you'll go to jail, right? Because double the speed limit is jail in California. So 35, you're doing 70 and a 35, you go to jail. And I don't think a Lamborghini gets you out of it. I think that gets you a quicker trip to jail.
I am not the smartest person. But I have wound out when I had an R1 and my Ducati and stuff like that. I've wound them out on the freeway where I know the speedometer isn't accurate because there's a percentage that those things do not read correctly. But, when the speedometer says 180 miles an hour, you may or may not be the smartest person doing that on the freeway. And when I had the Viper and I took that thing out, we did 150, out on these country roads back here, just nobody around for a brief moment. Nobody's around, and I open her up, and it's not the smartest thing ever.
No, I used to...
but it was damn fun.
I used to commute from Santa Cruz to L.A. when I was young, and I had a nice Z28 Camaro. Not super, but it would do 145. And the minute I got over the Grapevine, I would peg it and just streak up the straightaway. That's like from my house to your house, just straight forever. And I would just peg that thing and just leave it at full throttle for like 45 minutes. Because I'm just trying to get to Santa Cruz to see my girlfriend, and it just
I see.
It just never dawned on me the stupidity. I always thought I was so in control.
Yeah,
right?
I'm very smart.
And yeah, I would never do that. I had that Z. I love my Z, and it's so stupid for me to even own because I'm
in the same boat, but I just like the way mine sounds. So
that's
whatever.
That's it. I'll go down and sit in the garage and just idle it and whop, whop, whop.
Mine. What's stupid is mine stays in the 500 horse mode. I rarely put it into the 700 horse. Just even in the 500, you just roll on. You're just like, whoa. Oh yeah, that sounds cool.
But it's such
totally
danger.
It's totally for me the look and the sound of the car. It could have had 200 horsepower.
Yeah.
Don't care. It sounds cool to me, and I like
cool.
the body shape. That's the biggest. Okay, good example of this. I have a thing for wagons. I don't know why, but like the Outback when they are done correctly, or even the old Subaru. I think BMW and Audi have wagons.
Sure.
When they are done right.
Oh, the Audi
monster powerhouse engines. But they look so cool.
Right.
It's funny because me and my bass player were talking about it because I saw an Outback the other day that was just, man, the person did a really nice job. It was so awesome. I was like, damn it, I want one of those.
And that's a somewhat sensible car because now you have something that, like, if you put all of its power down, yeah, it's gross speed still, right? But it's just not ridiculous amounts. It's like within the reason. Like you'll get to double over and really quick and then be able to back off, Uh-oh. Hold on. That was a have to. If my brother sends me a message, it could mean, oh, come on, phone.
It's making us wait in the wings. What is so important?
Well, it could mean that he's like coming in with like workers, like I'm on my way in.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say ladies. I was like, hi.
No, he's got a girlfriend, so that doesn't happen. So, anyway.
All right, so I guess that winds it down. I thought it was an interesting thing with IndyCar talking about what they were trying to do, and I was just curious how much we talk about the esports bubble and how much is that going to play against into somebody's decision making in a licensing agreement for an IndyCar game. So,
and I also got to wonder, I mean, we can end this now, but I also wonder, like, are they thinking, okay, everyone else is doing it, so we need to do it too? Or are they like, this is what we're going to do, and this is how it's going to translate into what we're trying to achieve? And I'm like, I doubt that's the case. I bet it's unfortunately more like, well, F1's got one, NASCAR's got one, Pain's got one, Outlaw Sprint Car has one, for God's sake. And
yeah, well, maybe there's a little bit of that. I could see that. Like, look, the freaking off-road trucks and iRacing got it, and we still don't have. There's something wrong here.
I mean, American Rallycross doesn't even exist, or it died, and they have one.
Oh, yep.
So, well, it could be great though, because I
cross my fingers. I hope whatever avenue that they take, it is a complete scenario, all cars or liveries, whatever we want to choose, and all, Honda and Chevrolet, and we get all the tracks.
Yep.
I think that's my wish list for that. At the bare minimum, I would like to see some sort of a good career mode in it. Obviously, if they don't, they're not going to do that, then I'm not going to expect that. But at the bare minimum, I want to see good liveries or an editor of some sort. Both the Honda and Chevrolet, and I want to see all the tracks.
Yep.
I would like to see all the tracks on the circuit be in the game.
Yeah, I think that for North American road racers, whichever sim gets this, will be rewarded by that market share of the crowd that's already here. Again, I can't vouch for how many people it'll bring in, but I can see there being a huge void for the North American racing fan / sim racer who's wanted this. We bring up Long Beach. You just have to mention Long Beach. And
Right.
Everyone in iRacing is just, what the hell, right? Where? When? Why? It's like, and I can only imagine at this point the only thing is that they've like completely forgotten, don't care, and I don't mean that as a shot as much as I think we all care a lot more than iRacing does about Long Beach, and it's because of IndyCar. It's because that is the Monte Carlo of North America. It is the second biggest road racing event in America, I think. I would say that Daytona 500 is the number one. I mean, and the 24, and then the Indy 500, and then Long Beach is like right there. I mean, there aren't a lot of these races in America. I would embrace Project Cars too, because one of the best driving experiences I ever did was Project Cars IndyCar at Long Beach. Funny enough, it's like I'll drive that right now. I love that combo. So I'd be pretty eager. I would love to run a series run in it. So I hope it means a lot of good things for the future. I mean, it's speculation now. It's rumor. But it could be a lot of good things. So what do you got coming up, Billy?
I'm going to finish up my video on the Season 3 build. I'm debating whether I trust getting... I don't even know why I say that. I'm going to get the F1 game, and then we'll see how that goes. I'm sitting here trying to tell myself, well, I might or might not. I'm going to get the stupid thing.
You got to get it. You got to get it.
Yeah, so I'll get that. We'll probably do some sort of thing I did like with ACC. Some sort of impressions. It may be just the first 2 hours, and I may return it, or it might be a little longer.
People loved your approach on that ACC video. I've talked to people. I've had people make comments on it. We talked about it on last Friday night show or Monday night show. It was brought up. So, yeah, people really like the way you did that.
No, I appreciate that. I'm just trying to, I was just trying to figure out a different way where I could give people my thought process as I'm going through, and that the idea was to document if it changed. As it went, did my opinion change the more I played? That kind of thing, and that's what I wanted it to be, was a more of a documentary style, but still give you information about what you could expect. So I appreciate that. So I think that's the kind of formula I'm going to take to do F1 2019.
People are asking about your band release schedule, recording schedule. How's things going?
So we are currently going through different mixes. We will probably have not the final version of one of our songs, but a close that we will release, because we've got two. We have yesterday, we just got confirmed to be on two big shows. The first one's a big local show on the 12th of June down in Sacramento, a place called Harlow's. We have tickets for sale. And then on the 31st of August, we were playing with Skin Lab, which is a bigger, world touring band. They've been around for a long time. But Skin Lab's a good size band for us to open for. So we're on that bill at Holy Diver down in Sacramento again with on the 31st of August.
Awesome.
So we're trying to get those are bigger shows for us. So we're really trying to get squared away on how we want to approach a set list and all that stuff. And then in between all that, we're also getting mixes done for the 3 songs. Like I said, I'm trying to get those. At least one song will probably be released in its not totally done state here,
Right.
probably within the next week. But I hope to have a final version on whatever song we decide to release out to the public by late July, early August
Okay.
for that stuff. So
Wow, that's moving along. That's a lot. That's great to hear that's all going along so well.
yeah, I mean it's still rolling along good. Cross my fingers. Write it as long as possible, and we'll see what happens.
Awesome.
Other than that, I don't know if I have anything else that I've got planned to do. What was funny is, E3 happened. They announced that the Division 2 was having a free weekend. So my son and I, he has an Xbox, I have an Xbox. So we decided to download it for free, and we had a good time with that. So we ended up purchasing the Division 2. And so, we've been doing that in, I guess, all my other spare time. And I'm going camping in a few weeks. So I've got all kinds of crap going on. How about you?
Wow, I'm about to go crazy. So I was gonna be gone this week, but I'm here. Tonight, Watkins Glen, 6 hours of the Glen. We're running the Friday night race because Stan's schedule couldn't allow him, and our group is running the Daytona Prototype. So it's essential we stay together. Running tonight's race, that'll be at 6:40. Super excited about that. I'll be watching our GTE team running at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So we'll have 2 different cars running 2 completely different races on iRacing. I have my WRC8 first thoughts, which if you've listened to, last week's Friday show, if you listened to Monday's show, you probably heard almost all my thoughts. So, there is nothing new information in that respect. But I do have some cool footage of me driving it, John Hill driving it, some people from the trade show. I filmed others driving it. I wanted that comparison of people who don't play and the people who do play. So some cool footage. It's definitely going to show you what it looks like, for sure. That'll come out right now as soon as we end this show. And then Thursday, I am flying to London. So I'll be working on a full motion simulator for a very important client utilizing a very marquee brand name car being turned into a simulator, and I'm on that team.
Awesome.
They and I'll tell people a little background. I've done some car conversions in the past. I'm a pretty good fabricator. I am not a mechanical engineer. I don't do CAD. I don't do drawings. I don't do pieces that will be made by someone else. I go in, I cut, I lathe, I melt, bend, weld, whatever parts, and I'm good at doing that. This job is not that kind of job. So I was like, well, why do you guys want me on the team? I'm just being honest with everybody. And it's like, they're like, well, my expertise. And bottom line is they want me there for final tuning, like to just get this thing like as good as it can feel. They're depending, and I think I do that very well. And then they want me to do like VIP driver training for the people who have paid for this thing. Get them up to speed and train them, and then finally teaching the staff how to operate it. So I'll be doing all the training kind of stuff. So it should be fun. I'll be there for a couple of weeks. So I'm going to be off the air until what looks like as late as the 15th, I hate to say.
Right. And we're going to still try to figure out something to do every week so that there's still some sort of a show. So we're not leaving everybody high and dry, whether it's on your channel or my channel. Logistically speaking, is still to be determined because we don't know quite what your situation is.
Yeah.
But we will still have a show regardless. And Car Heroes asks, will I do a follow-up on ACC with the new fixes? I will do a follow-up because I still want to drive that game. I will do a follow-up when they fix some of the complaints, the major complaints that I have. So when that update, they have updated it, but those fixes really don't change my core feeling about what's going on. So when they address that, I will make a follow-up video because I think that's fair. If I'm going to sit there and I believe that in those videos I did praise the things that I thought were worthy, but also I did voice my frustrations with the things that I thought could have been avoided. And so I think that's fair if they address the things that I had concerns and problems with, to make a new video saying, hey, this is where they're at now. I think that's only fair. I don't think we should leave it in that state if they've gone through the trouble to do that.
I agree. But then it doesn't have to be a full review. It can almost be like a correction or a omission type video.
Right. It'll just be, hey, this is what they've changed and this is what I like, or this is what they could tweak. But they attempted at least to change the problems that I had with it.
Right. Yep. I even talk about iRacing. Like, wow, I haven't really, like, when do I go back and re-review or update iRacing, with the changes that they've made. That also goes back to, like, kind of what you were talking about, early access. It's like, well, some things are calling it early access where I feel bad reviewing it. Some things come out before they should, and then should I be reviewing it? And then if they do fix what was broken, then do I have an obligation to the industry, to myself, to them, to go back and correct that as well? Anyway, all right, well, that's all I got. Yeah, like I said, I'm leaving town, so I'm going to be missing this, but I'm going to try. I'm working on some mobile solutions. It's not the camera so much as the bandwidth in a foreign country, even though that's pretty much a first world country, right? London?
I would not say that it's not.
So I should be able to get some decent bandwidth depending on where we're staying, and I'll be working on that. I want to give people updates, and if I can show what we're doing, I will. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we have to do something where I can just show people pictures, if you can't do it on your end.
Yeah, like some updates.
I'd like to. That would be cool.
The updates from the road. So we'll get on that. Other than that, everybody get out there, do that Project Cars leaderboard. Let's storm that leaderboard and see how high we can get. I'm going to run on the PC. Billy might run on both, who knows? And
it would be interesting.
Yeah, send in your screenshots and we'll post them. Maybe put them on our Facebook page if I'm going to be gone. And yeah, Cranky Paints, I'm sorry. It looks like we will be off the air for SImpit for a couple weeks. I might, like we said, we might be able to get you some teasers and some content. I might do some just live, nothing formal, but just live on YouTube or Facebook. So just kind of keep on top of the channel, and hopefully we'll have stuff. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Billy, thank you once again. I always love talking sim racing. And everybody out there, get out there, do some sim racing, and have some fun this weekend. Happy Friday. Have a good weekend. This is Beyond the Sim. I'm Shaun Cole. That's Billy Strange. And we will see you on the track.
See ya.